Joe, you have the Attorney General of the United States saying that a judge's order is an intrusion on the president's authority. You have Tom Homan, the border czar, saying those flights are going to continue today and saying, Joe, quote, I don't care what the judges think. So where do we go from here?
It's like saying if you're in the government, I mean, it's like saying I don't care what the clouds think. They're not allowed to rain today. I mean, yeah, you have to care what the judges think because that's Madisonian, it's Madison constitutional law. He has to do it. And this happens, like we said, Stephen Miller saying this is the greatest judicial abuse or whatever he said of all time. It's not even close. And here's the thing. Chances are very good that the Supreme Court will provide the President of the United States wide latitude on issues of immigration. They just can't violate a judge's order because they don't want to wait for the appeals. And this happens to every president. The idea that people are acting shocked and stunned and deeply sad, like, oh, this is it's like, it's like they've never read newspapers. I was going to say never read law books, but it's like they've never read newspapers. They've never watched news. This happens to every president. Let me just give you a couple of examples of district court judges in conservative districts who stopped rulings of Democratic presidents. During the Obama administration in 2015, a U.S. District Court judge from Texas, appointed by George W. Bush, issued an injunction halting President Obama's DAPA program, which wanted to shield millions of undocumented immigrants from deportation. Stopped it. And then it got appealed. And then the Supreme Court ruled 4-4, ended up against Barack Obama in 2016. A U.S. District Court judge also from Texas, also appointed by Bush, issued a nationwide injunction that blocked the Obama administration's guidance requiring schools to allow bathroom access based on gender identity. In 2021, a single U.S. District Court judge nominated by Donald Trump temporarily blocked President Biden's administration from enforcing a COVID-19 vaccine mandate for federal contractors. And it's not just federal judges who are conservative from the state of Texas who've ruled against Democratic and Republican presidents. In 2006, a U.S. District Court judge appointed by Jimmy Carter ruled that the Bush administration's program of eavesdropping without warrants was illegal and unconstitutional and violated the Fourth Amendment. Claire, I go back to what I was telling my Republican brothers and sisters during the impeachment of Bill Clinton. I said, just be careful. Don't think that there will never be another Republican president again. Hold this president to the same standard that you would want a Republican president held to. And these Republican senators and members of the House that are sitting back while they're saying we're going to defy the courts are acting as if there's never going to be a Democrat. What if there's a progressive president that's elected in 2028 because of the overreach of the MAGA right? And then that progressive judge says, well, or that progressive president says, well, the Trump administration ignored judges' rulings they don't like, so I'll just ignore judges' rulings that I don't like. That puts us in such a dark place. Bad if a conservative does it, bad if a MAGA conservative does it, bad if a progressive does it. The fact is, Claire, no president, certainly this century or last, has ever done this.
Yeah, and talking about the Republican Party, Joe, historically, the Republican Party has been the one railing against too much executive action. They have been the one railing against government that has a heavy hand. They're the one that has been railing against government who does not think they have to prove with facts any action taken against people in America. Okay? And this protects all Americans. It protects people who are here legally. It does not protect immigrants. And what really people need to understand is this judge never said that Donald Trump cannot make people leave this country that have committed crimes that are here illegally. He didn't do that. He went out of his way to say he was not doing that. He was merely saying it is time for there to be some evidence about what has happened here and how it happened. But rather than do that, we have the Attorney General of the United States of America saying that this federal district judge, who, by the way, is the chief justice, the chief judge among all of the judges in the D.C. area of all the federal judges, saying that he likes terrorists, accuses him of being friendly to terrorists, because all he said was, wait a minute, we need to have a hearing so the American people are protected by the law, and the big government is required to go through their paces and prove their case. That's all that happened here. So that's particularly egregious that the Republican Party, who is in a lay-down mode to the executive completely taking over the other two branches of government, that they're letting this go by without anybody saying anything about how dangerous it is. And you're right. Someday there'll be a Democratic president that will want to overstep their bounds, and then the Republicans will have to lie in what they've created.
And that's the through line, Claire, what you just said. Try to expand the power of the executive branch. Even just the last few days, what we saw, the president's speech at DOJ, talking about using law enforcement to go after his political enemies, threatening to muzzle the news media. His claim, nonsensical perhaps, to try to avoid President Biden's pardons. And then, Mike, certainly everything we're seeing here about this defiance of a court order, even if they're arguing, hey, we didn't quite defy this one, they're clearly laying the groundwork to potentially do so down the road. And they're putting Democrats in a political bind here. Democrats who are saying, look, we're a nation of laws. You have to have due process. You have to, respect a judge's ruling. But the gamble the Trump administration is making, I'm told by several people involved, is that they are putting up what they deem unsavory characters, these gang members, although we should be clear, there's some questions as to the identities of some of the people there. There's some immigration advocates think that some innocents have been rounded up with this group, and saying, go ahead, try to defend these people, which they put out in this highly produced, almost Hollywood-like video of them being put into one of the most hellish places on earth, this prison in El Salvador, and saying, look, yeah, try to defend that.
Well, thus you are outlining what is the pivotal point of the Trump administration, of Donald Trump's life, as a matter of fact, even including as president of the United States, the theater of things, the production values of things. When you see what we just saw, the perp walk of supposed criminals, immigrants here illegally, being perp walked out toward a plane, all dressed in, white and bent over and dragged by guards and everything like that. What you're seeing is a group of people that very few Americans are going to defend. They're going to say, yeah, fine, get them out of the country. They came here illegally. They pose a threat to us. The nub of it, though, is in doing that, they are violating probably some American laws that ought not to be violated, and they are doing it with seeming impunity. From Tom Homan saying, I don't care what the judge thinks, to that, it's a very thin line between what happens there and what's going to happen, perhaps, if they continue to do this, to an ordinary average American citizen taken off the streets here in this country.
And Claire, this gets at the foundation of what we do as a country and always have done, of our democracy, which is the courts decide, the courts issue orders. You can appeal those orders and go all the way up to the Supreme Court if you want to. So I guess the question is, what happens as a practical matter if the judge rules against the administration and they keep doing this? And they do what Tom Homan says, which is the flights are going to continue regardless of what a judge tells us.
Well, there are several things that are going to happen. All these cases are going to wind up in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is going to have a moment in our legal history where they will more aggressively define the limits of executive power. There's a lot of people who watch the Supreme Court closely who think they're going to go further than probably most Americans would be comfortable with. But nevertheless, they're going to decide. And I think there's a number of things that Trump has done that put him in a bad place with the Supreme Court. And I would put near the top of this list not only define a court order, which is going to really rankle people who were district court judges and were appellate judges that are on the Supreme Court, but also this idea that they're going after law firms who have represented people that Donald Trump doesn't like. That's a pretty scary thing.
Private law firms.
Private law firms.
Yeah.
To a large law firm who most of the people at that law firm have never seen Jack Smith, don't know Jack Smith, had nothing to do with Jack Smith, but trying to cut off their livelihood because their firm represented someone who was unpopular with the sitting president. That is really going to be something that judges are going to go, whoa, 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 whoa. Our entire system depends on people who are bad people getting lawyers, much less somebody who is just doing their job under the facts, which was Jack Smith. So it's really, I think, going to be a moment where the Supreme Court, they're not popular right now for a lot of ethical transgressions that have occurred in the recent past. But you know, John Roberts has a big job here. Frankly, Amy Coney Barrett has a big job here. I think the other four are lost on the MAGA island, but those two, I think, have shown a willingness to really take a hard look at executive power and the overreach. Let me say it again. This is the overreach of big government. And all the folks out there in Missouri who have told me at hundreds of town halls, we want government off our backs, I don't think they realize that they have unleashed, what did she call the Kraken or whatever it was, in terms of big government overreach with what this administration is trying to do.